Hello, folks. The Atheist Prepper here, coming to you from the very precise location of somewhere in Florida. I want to talk today about something that's stupid. I would say it's kind of stupid, but it's actually really stupid. I want to talk about nuclear war. Now, I was a child during the end period of the Cold War. I was a kid at the time, but I do remember, when the Berlin Wall came down and the Soviet Union dissolved and that kind of stuff. And for, most of my adult life, and even until now, but for most of my adult life, I've really considered nuclear war to be pretty much a thing of the past. I know even with claims about, the potential of nuclear terrorism, to me that's really just never struck much of a chord. For one thing, because nuclear material, not just the fissionable material itself, but the material to build a bomb is incredibly expensive. And it actually does take a high level of technical ability to put the bomb together. I've just never really seen nuclear terrorism as a big threat. Now, maybe I'm crazy, but I've never seen that as a big threat. And, rogue states, if you consider, like Iran is considered a rogue state, and, oh no, we're supposed to be afraid they're going to get nuclear weapons. People living in Israel should be afraid they're going to get nuclear weapons. People living in other Muslim countries of different sects should be afraid they're going to get nuclear weapons. But they're not going to build a nuclear weapon and try to bring it over and use it against the United States. We're really not, even though some extremist Muslims may call us the Great Satan or whatever, Israel is really their big enemy. And Israel should be concerned about that. But it's not something they're going to use against us. And it's not something that's going to start a nuclear war. And it's probably not even something they're going to use. Because they know if they use it, it's going to be used against them, mutually assured destruction, all that stuff. So for a long time, I've basically considered nuclear war to be an issue of the past. And yes, it did almost happen a few times in the past. And accidents are still possible. But I really considered that it was not an issue to be considered now. The reason I'm bringing this up, by the way, is on my last video, in a conversation with one of the other users who watches my videos. Now, we were talking about what we consider to be the potential and likely causes that could lead to a precipitous decline in the United States. And I had said that I thought a coronal mass ejection, essentially a solar EMP, that was really the one thing, with possibly a secondary culprit of a pandemic. A severe pandemic could cause a precipitous decline in the United States. But I really thought the one thing that kind of keeps me awake at night sometimes is coronal mass ejection, because of just what it would do, and it could happen at any time. We're right now in the solar maximum, and the sun is firing off shots as we speak, and so it's something I consider. But anyway, I decided to discuss something that I think is an emerging threat again, and that's nuclear war. And I'm not one of these crazy people that thinks anybody wants nuclear war. Nobody wants nuclear war. That wouldn't be good for anyone. That wouldn't be beneficial for anyone. But I think sometimes people play a little recklessly. Now, I'm going to sort of make an assumption about you, whoever you are listening to this. My audience is probably going to consist primarily of crazy conspiracy theorists who, of one variety or another, who recognize that there is a powerful force in the United States that has been termed the military-industrial complex. And the military-industrial complex, or corporations that manufacture military equipment, manufacture armaments for the United States military, needs enemies. Essentially, they make their living selling us, the American people, weapons. They don't sell us weapons for ourselves. You can't go to the shooting range and fire off an Abrams tank or an Apache helicopter. But they sell us weapons for the military. And in order to convince the American people that we should spend even more money to buy even more military equipment, to buy more weapons, new weapons, better weapons for the military, we really have to believe there's some kind of threat out there. I think probably the best threat in history was the Soviet Union. When the Cold War was going, mutually assured destruction is very expensive, and the military-industrial complex benefited greatly from that. And it has continued to benefit from the war on terror. But, Americans are kind of growing weary with the war on terror. We're kind of beginning to realize that it's actually not going anywhere, that we're actually just going over and bombing and going over and getting ourselves shot, and we're really not benefiting anybody, and we're really not changing anything, at least for the better. In some cases, we're changing things for the worse, but not for the better. So, as Americans have kind of grown weary of the war on terror, I think the strategists who select and build our enemies, which is what happens, have settled on Russia again. And yeah, Putin does want the USSR back. He wants the former glory days. He wants it to feel like it did when he was a KGB agent in the USSR. And he is flexing his muscle. Russia is flexing its muscle. And it is trying to, push other countries around a little bit. As Americans, we think we're the only country that should be able to do that. We're the only country that should be able to go around and tell every other country what to do and, threaten them and break international law and all that stuff. But the Russians are, they're arrogant too, and they think they should be able to do it also. And we don't want to put up with that. But I don't think that's the main reason the antagonization has been going on between the United States and Russia. I think it's because we need a better enemy. We need an enemy we're not going to so quickly tire of as we have terrorism. We need an enemy we're not going to so quickly see through. And we need an enemy that's more technologically advanced. Because, why do you need the new Joint Strike Fighter to attack people that have no advanced anti-aircraft, have no air force of their own, have no ground-to-air missiles? Why do you need new and expensive stealth equipment to fight Al-Qaeda or ISIS or ISIL or the Mujahideen or Al-Qaeda in Iraq or whatever it is they want to call themselves now? You don't. You don't need that. You don't need a new tank, and you don't need new helicopters, and you don't need new airplanes. You can use the same 20-year-old stuff you've been using. But if you want to sell the American people on buying a bunch more armaments, you have to gin up a new foe, or an old one. But that's what worries me, because, well, for several things. We did in the past come very close to a nuclear war with Russia. And it was largely through our stupidity, our nation's stupidity, as we were attempting to sell ourselves more and more weapons, as we were attempting to make the Soviet Union look scarier to us. We were making ourselves look scarier to them. we were making them feel increasingly like they needed to protect themselves from us. And then, in turn, we were also making ourselves feel the same way and building paranoia. And, of course, we weren't the only ones responsible for that. The Soviet Union was definitely participating. But our nation knew what it was doing. When it claimed there was, under Kennedy, when it claimed there was a missile gap and the United States was far behind, and they knew that the Soviet Union had like 2 working intercontinental ballistic missiles, and they had, the United States had hundreds. They knew that at the time, but they claimed, oh no, we're way behind, we need to build more. That was the work of the military-industrial complex. And as tensions are rising again between what I think is probably a less stable Russia than the Soviet Union was, and what I think is probably a less stable United States than the United States was during that time, though I can't say for sure. It's been pretty crazy the whole time. But as all this is going on, it does make me wonder if one of these days we're going to have to start seriously considering, I don't think it's at that point yet, but if one of these days we're going to have to start seriously considering whether nuclear war is an actual possibility, if families are going to start building bunkers again, like they once did, nuclear shelters. Anyway, that's my video. That's my point of view, my question, my thought. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you'll like and subscribe and all that stuff. Come back and watch more videos. Thanks.